If we were all just intentional with the way that we spent our money, we could solve the world's problems.
Woo, 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 girl. Yes.
So every time you spend $1, you're casting a vote for what kind of world you want to live in. Do you want to enslave people for your clothing, or do you want to free people with your clothing? Do you want to enslave people with your candles, or do you want to free people with your candles? And so that's the second core part of who we are as a company.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the privilege and honor to interview Amber Runyon. Amber is a living legend. She is living my dream, as well as many other people listening in on this call. She is actually doing the work to help end human trafficking. Amber, thank you so much for joining us on the G-Force podcast.
Yes, Queen. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I'm going to read a little bit of background about Amber so you guys know what a boss this woman is. Amber Runyon is a speaker, nurse, candle maker, social entrepreneur, founder, and visionary of 11th Candle Company. Amber began her journey as a nurse and went on to do medical missions across the world. While in Ethiopia, she witnessed 2 young girls being sold into human trafficking in broad daylight. In this moment, she realized she didn't want to live in a world where little boys and little girls could be bought and sold. In 2015, she friggin' did something about it. Amber founded her nonprofit Legacy and 11th Candle Company with the mission to redeem, restore, and empower, as well as equip those vulnerable to human trafficking, abuse, and exploitation and addiction. 5 years later, the organization continues to welcome women with employment, trauma-informed counseling, and a safe place to be themselves. Amber has been featured in a gajillion magazines, articles, and other media. In August 2018, she gave a TED Talk on ending human trafficking through employment, and she lives every single day as a force for good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Amber. Amber, man, you were doing it.
I mean, I feel like they make you sound real good when they write those things. Like, today I poured candles. So, it's either giving a TED Talk or you're wicking candles. It's one or the other, but thank you for having me, for sure.
What I love about the statement you just made is so many people think that there's this like Instagram life. Of the world looks so awesome and so cool in this moment of like saving lives and like we helped 1,000 women, blah, blah, blah. And they're like getting out of the chains, da, da, da. But the real day-to-day is what it really looks and feels like. It looks like pouring candles. It looks like dealing with accounting. It looks like dealing with COVID. And so you've got a really amazing organization that's making a huge difference, but what does it feel like to you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We're coming up on 5 years, which is, in the business world, it's kind of like if you've made it to 5, you've kind of made it, right? And so I remember when I started this, I was a nurse. And I remember I thought, okay, like this is going to be like a little hobby and I'm still going to be able to nurse. And then it grew and then it grew and then it grew. And I mean, I was maybe 4 months into starting a company and I had to quit my nursing job. And so it's kind of interesting to I feel like this year's definitely been very like, introspective from like, wow, we're getting ready to turn 5. Like, that's insane. We've been doing this for 5 years. But it's still, in some ways, it's still so funny because like, we're into our fall season, which is a big candle season. Everybody loves a good fall candle, which we appreciate. And so for me, I'm still in the shop. Could I probably be out of the shop more than I am? I probably could and probably should. But that's what I love to be, right? I love to be in there, creating and making and so on. And so it's so interesting, kind of like what you said, people have this idea of what it is to be like this social entrepreneur, right? Oh my goodness, you've been on this magazine and I'm like, honey, this is not that at all. It's your phone never stops. It's that there's always a need. And that as a true entrepreneur, you literally do everything within the company. I sweep the floors, I make candles, I have to, figure out what money goes where and how and all those different things. So I think that we have this idea of what we think it is and what it is in reality is very different. But looking back into 5 years, it's kind of incredible to be like, whoa, we like built this thing, right? Like, holy cow. And so I think it's this kind of weird sort of, you live in it it's kind of like a kid, right? You live with this kid every single day, and then before you know it, they're like off to school, and you're like, wait a second, like and so it's kind of the same thing for the company.
Wow. So you were a nurse, and at I think 2015, before that, you saw these little girls being trafficked in broad daylight. First of all, did you just go destroy these human beings, or did you just want to go destroy these human beings? Because I had a very similar experience, and that rage inside of me.
Oh, it's a real thing.
Rage, that is why Ariel exists at all. All of my companies are not, supported by the rage, but they were founded by the rage, if that makes sense. And that rage is passion, the passion of freaking do something about it. And I didn't stay angry. I shifted it into love, which is what I tell people to do, because if you stay angry, you're going to be really upset at the end of your life and age quickly. Right, for sure. So,
you need a little bit more Botox than you need to bump your Botox appointments if you're going to stay angry. So save your forehead.
Save your forehead, people. That fury, that fury just made me have enough utsta or whatever that is, that made me able to get over all the obstacles that we faced as an organization. So tell me, a little bit more about what you saw, and then how did this idea come about and then get born?
Yeah. So I was a nurse, and I had traveled over to many countries and led many teams. And on one of my trips, I fell in love with a little girl named Mulu. And I just kept going back to see her over and over and over again. I'm talking like 4 or 5 times a year. It's 8,902 miles away. It's a nice little jaunt. We're going clear to the east side of Africa. And so I began to the village became my village, and it's a very torn area. So we're kind of right where the Afro-Oromo and the hammocks meet. And so it is not a peaceful area in any time. And so there are not a lot of there's not a lot of help, and it's a very torn country, and so on and so forth. And so I was just over on a trip to see Moo, and it wasn't even on a medical trip, although I'd led many medical teams there. This was on a trip to see Moo and the other kids that, we kind of come to know and whatnot. And we really hadn't started anything. We had built a soccer field and a library, kind of all these random, without being a company or an organization. And I remember going to the village, and if you've traveled overseas, but for those that haven't, you don't really move in third world country in traffic. You kind of just putter your little way through. And so out of the right side of my eye, I caught these 2 girls that were blindfolded, and a guy had a stick as if they were cattle. So if you're moving cattle through the village, if the cattle go too far to the right, they kind of bump them over, and if they go too far to the left, they kind of bump them over. And so I said to my translator, Suleiman, what are they doing? And he said, they're being sold. I'm like, he is the best translator, but I don't think he understood me. And so I'm like, Suleiman, what are those men doing? And he said, they're being sold. And I'm like, God, we never, right? And so then I'm slowing it down, Suleiman, what are they? And he's like, Amber, they're being sold for sex. And I was like, what? He said, they're being sold for sex. They're blindfolded so they can't see where they're going. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I mean, they were tiny, maybe 5 and 7. Right? And Moo's sitting right beside me. And Moo at that point is probably 5, 6-ish. And I'm like, what? And he's like, they're being sold for sex. Amber, they're going from this brothel to just matter of fact, which was so striking to me, because I was like, wait, he's explaining this to me as if I'm asking what they're doing with those potatoes.
It's normal. This is just a normal thing.
And so I was like, what? And so I remember I did not jump out of the van, because so we have to be super secure there. Because I'm not only am I white, but I have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I'm a female. And so they literally, when I would come into town, people would walk miles and miles just to see me, because it was such an anomaly that there's a Caucasian or a white person there.
It's like seeing a blue person with gel hair or something.
Literally, a lot of them, I'm the first white person that they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they want to touch your hair, and so it's a whole thing. And so I couldn't just jump out of the van, because trust, that is my personality.
What country is this, one more time?
Ethiopia.
Okay.
And so we're 3.5 hours outside of the city of Addis Ababa. So we're in the I mean, we're rural, like there's no running water, no electricity, you know, literal starving children. And so my natural inclination, like my personality is, I'm about to jump out this van and handle this myself, right? Like, however, I couldn't. And they made that very clear to me that I was like, not to move. I would get us all killed. Like, and so I remember I went back to our hotel. I use the word hotel loosely. And I called a friend, and he was like $12 a minute. I did not care. And I was like, I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here. Like, this is not, I mean, I'm like losing my mind. It's like this beautiful garden, like losing my mind in this garden, right? Like, this is not okay. Like, I got to get out of here. Like, I mean, full on like panic attack. And I remember she said, Amber, go inside and get yourself a glass of wine, take 2 Benadryl, start again tomorrow morning. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, I mean, like just utterly breaking down, right? And you can't really explain it to the Africans, because to them it is like, it is a big deal, but it's not a big deal, right? Very similar to America, right? I think that we think this is a far off thing, right? And so I'll kind of wrap that up. And I came back to Columbus, which is where I live. And you can't sleep in the middle of the night. So you're either Googling like, how long is Jesus's hair, or something productive. And I was like, Columbus, Ohio's biggest social issue. Listen, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't sleep. The whole time change thing is real rough. So, and so I'm Googling Columbus, Ohio's biggest social issue, human trafficking. And I was like, what?
That was what came up.
I was like, that can't be. So then again, I asked Solomon twice. I asked like Google like 3 times. Like Columbus, Ohio's, in Columbus at that point, and I think still we're the 4 or 5. We kind of bounce around from 4 or 5. And the for human trafficking, you know, 4th ranked or 5th ranked for human trafficking. And I was like, what? Like, that literally cannot be. And so then I began to like really look at it. And if we were to become a generation that would go from raped to redeemed, where do we fall short as a city, state, and nation, right? And so I began to break down, like, from a city standpoint, where are we really falling short? From a state standpoint, where are we really falling short? And from a national standpoint, where are we falling short? And so where I saw that common thread was employment, right? Because there are places that are specific to getting them off of the streets, places specific. But I found that where we kind of hit this roadblock and where a lot of women would relapse back would be employment. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll start a company, right? Seems like the right thing to do. Again, nurse, 0 business background. So Google, again, it's a very common thread in my life. I Google cheapest company to start, candle company. Okay. So I took $250 of my own dollars and started a candle company, and here we are today.
So I love what you're saying, because we talk about this a lot in G-Force. And we're like, you know, whenever you don't know what to do, and whenever you're really at your wit's end and you just need answers, you have to do the most profound thing that our generation, I think, has stumbled upon, which is summon Google.
Yeah.
Life is not that...
I call it Mama Google and Daddy YouTube. Mama Google will tell you anything, Daddy will teach you anything. Like,
you know what? Life is not that freaking complicated. If you want to do something, figure it out. I love it. Yeah. You know, did you have a family member or, you know, a parent specifically hand you a bunch of money or a bunch of experience to get your life started?
No. So I was actually raised in the foster care system. So I have no family. And I lived very humbly in cars and homeless, and then put myself through nursing school. And so we started the company with $250 of my dollars, and we have never owed a penny in debt. We've never borrowed money. And we're, you know, we usually hit about $1 million a year in sales. So yeah, but no, nobody handed me any money. Nobody taught me how to do accounting personally or business wise. That was all learned. I strongly do not suggest this route.
It's just, accounting is just not as fun. Of course we take care of it. We just we do not enjoy doing it ourselves.
No, I love people that know how to do this sort of, they can like look at numbers and then make them do things. And I'm like,
they get pumped about it, but you know what?
Super pumped. And I love those people. I always tell people, like, if you send me an Excel spreadsheet, lock it. Like, do not let me. Like, it is not a good idea. Like, not a good idea. I promise I will jack it up. I don't even know how I do it, but I do it. But yeah, and so I think that that's the thing that people miss. And again, my heart was like, okay, we have to help these people. And the way that we help these people was to start a company the cheapest company to start is this company. I don't even like candles, which people find fascinating. Like, I don't use them in my home. I don't really like them. Obviously, I'm super passionate about ours, like the quality and the product and all of that stuff that we use, but it's not a product that I use every day.
That's so
me personally.
No, I've never been into real estate. I've never been into real estate, and people would shocked to hear that.
But I also think that that's what makes us successful, is that we're not so tied to our thing. Yeah. Like, it doesn't hurt my feelings if you don't buy my candles, because okay, like, but I think that once people get so tied to their product or so tied to their service, it becomes like a personal, like, oh, well, you don't like Sunday brunch? Me either. Like, I think it's awful also. Like, you did not hurt my feelings. When I started the company, I picked out 5 scents that I love and 5 that I absolutely hated. And then the 11th one we auctioned off for somebody to be able to pick the scent and the name. And that's how we came up with our signature 11 scents. Because I knew there'd be people that would love the things I would love, but there are also people that love the things that I hate. So I just was kind of like, I mean, it's worked out. So
you're so matter of fact. I do love my houses though, and you should totally buy them. Just saying.
I mean, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I've never purchased a home because I always feel like I've been like waiting. And when you start a business, you like just suck everything back into it. And now that all this craziness is happening, as a first time home buyer, I'm like, oh, I am sitting in the most perfect spot. So I'm actually looking for a place. So
hey, there you go. I've got family up there. But the point of what I'm gaining from your story is you're just a woman of no excuses. And in my experience, I've heard so many people have these huge passions, these huge desires, and they find what I call holy sounding excuses. You know, I didn't have enough money. I don't have enough experience. I don't have enough, or I don't have the right environment, or the economy this, or this president that. And the bottom line is, if you really want to make something happen, if you really want to be used as a force for good too, then you just friggin' figure it out regardless of the obstacles that are in front of you. You know, I had almost every single thing go wrong. And I've said this over and over again in my career. I'm like, I've had everything go wrong except for a fire. And I finally had a fire. Dang it.
Yeah, I've learned not to say those things anymore. Like, well, what could happen is, nope. We're just gonna. This is what I say all the time to my employees. Like, it's head down, do your work. Head down, do your work, head down, do your work, right? Like, and so we employ survivors of human trafficking, which comes with a variety of issues, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people have never had normal jobs. It comes with a lot of issues. And so I'm always like, head down, do your work, man. Like, head down, do your work. We have a thing called check your crap at the door. And it's literally where you write a Post-it down as you walk into the door of the shop of like, whatever it is, whether it's your partner's irritating the crap out of you, you've got a sore back, you have a cold, this person angered you or whatever, you literally write it down on a Post-it and you drop it in the box and you check it at the door. If you want to get on your way out, you're welcome to. You're welcome to get on the way out, but you can also just leave it there. And so I think that, like, it's those sort of things that also, as like the leader, right? It's the same sort of thing. And we celebrate failures in our company, which I think is a huge thing. Like, we literally, like, I buy donuts and we have a meeting every month where we sit down and we celebrate what we failed at. And it creates a place and a culture where people feel like, and this is how this happened. We were brand spanking new as a company. And I walked into the shop early in the morning and there's like 2 racks of candles, which back then was a ton of candles, right? Like, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is so many candles for us. I mean, again, brand spanking new. Now 2 racks of candles we do like in every 30 minutes, right? But then that was gigantic. And I remember like picking them up and smelling them and they had no scent. We sell scented candles, so that's a big issue. And so then I picked up like the next one, it still didn't smell. And I picked up the next one, it still didn't smell.
And you didn't have COVID.
Nope. And I was like, well, this is an issue. And so I remember standing right there and I remember thinking to myself, okay, Runyon, this is where the rubber meets the road. How are you going to handle this? Right? I've never been a boss, right? I'm a nurse. Like, I mean, I just take care of my patients and I go about my life. And And I thought, okay, like, how are you going to handle this, right? Like, they don't make a book that tells you like how to do these things, specifically with women who have issues with authority, with women who have issues with failure, with women who have issues with confrontation. Like, how are you going to handle this? And so I ran up to the local bakery, which is the best bakery in the entire world, and I bought donuts. And they came in, they're like, wow, we got donuts. And I'm like, yep, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, so listen, here's what we did. And I remember like watching around the room, there's 5 of them there, and one of them's head dropped immediately. And I was like, so here's the deal. It is not a failure, because today you came to work instead of doing drugs. You came to work instead of prostituting. You showed up on time. It is not a failure. Now, do we promote wasting product? No, not at all. But then what happened, like, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks later, and it was one of the most beautiful moments ever. We have like heat guns because we have to test the heat of the wax. And one of the women dropped it into the bucket of wax, and she pulled it out, and like wax is slinging everywhere. And she goes, we get donuts. So instead of wrapping it up inside of like a paper towel and hiding it in the trash or lying about it, she celebrated the fact that she dropped the heat gun down into a pot of wax. And so I think that people just miss that. And back, kind of tracing back to what you said, making up holy excuses. Don't make up an excuse, fall flat on your face, celebrate that falling flat on your face, and then just get up and do it again.
I love that so much. So for those who don't know that much about your incredible business, can you explain how you provide employment for women, and exactly like what works about it? What have you learned over the years? And for those interested in doing it themselves, what are some things that they can be encouraged to keep going?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that people get wrapped up in that you have to solve like every problem, right? And so for us, it's employment. We focus on employment. And people are like, well, what's that really doing? Well, generationally, it changes a whole lot of things. People get their kids back. They get financially stable. Will everybody stay in our company and be a candle maker? Absolutely not. Our goal is to place them into places of employment that are kind of on their path of what they want to be. Sometimes that's a cash register at Speedway, and that's a success. Sometimes it's somebody getting a PhD, and that's a success. And so we have to stop defining what I would think of success as Shelby having a job at Speedway where she can provide for her family. That is a gigantic win. But when I started, it was like everybody's getting PhDs, everybody, you know what I mean? And I kind of recalibrate my expectations. But so we really focus primarily on employment, empowerment, education. So employment is employing the women that we employ on purpose. So we specifically look for women who have had this. We provide them with trauma-informed care inside the workplace and outside the workplace so they can work on their issues. And with that comes different, we do the different seminars and teach them about budgeting and eating and and I mean, things that people kind of take for granted, like balancing a checkbook, or, don't go to the corner store and spend $35 on snackies, though I'm a big snacky fan. This is how you can budget that same $35 and get 6 meals, which are really, really important life things that people, I think, take for granted because they were taught that. There's a whole bunch of people in this world that have never been taught those sort of things. How to wash your clothes, how to get a lease for an apartment, how to get a car, how to drive a car. And then the second part of our company is empowerment. And so when we say empowerment, we mean empowering consumers to use their consumerism to change the world. If every one of your listeners took their gift budget, which for an average American is about $1,200, which is shocking, but that's true, and they spin it at 11th Candle Company, we can employ hundreds more women. If we were all just intentional with the way that we spent our money, we could solve the world's problems.
Woo, 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 girl. Yes.
So every time you spend $1, you're casting a vote for what kind of world you want to live in. Do you want to enslave people for your clothing, or do you want to free people with your clothing? Do you want to enslave people with your candles, or do you want to free people with your candles? And so that's the second core part of who we are as a company. And then the third is education. And education is doing things like this, or speaking in schools, or education we provide with handouts, and every candle kind of comes with like, this is how we solve human trafficking. These are the issues and that sort of thing. And so when you look at that holistically, right? And we provide a living wage. So a living wage in the city of Columbus is $14. That means that they can live in a 2-bedroom apartment with average groceries and so on and so forth. The minimum wage is like $8.65. So a living wage and a minimum wage are two very different things. And so we provide living wages. That's what they start out at, which is why our candles are a bit more expensive, because you have to be able to provide labor at actual labor prices instead of trafficking them yet again. It's a very fine line. And so, yeah, so that's kind of who we are as a core as a company.
I love that. I love it so much. So I can't even help myself. I'm like taking notes on what you're saying. Yeah, I love it. My favorite quote of the day: use your consumerism to change the world. And we talk about this a lot. Money is nothing more than an expansion tool of the heart. And money does not change you. It reveals you. And it reveals really who you are, where you place it. Because money is fake. I mean, it's BS. So whatever it touches, though, it will expand. And so I want you to really grasp what she's saying. When you spend your dollars on a shirt and you're not really intentional about it, you don't know, or you don't care where it's made, it can literally be behind the scenes funding and expanding a company that enslaves people through not sex trafficking, but human trafficking, to be making that shirt. Or you could be buying this shirt that employs women that are getting out of trafficking. And it is, the studies show that people do go back to their traffickers because they've been so manipulated, so brainwashed, or their whole family and their whole life they've been told that they'll never be anything else. And, as horrible as it is, it's not normal. It's not okay. They're definitely struggling mentally. So you have to have grace for those that I would love to punch in the face that are like, why don't they just leave? I'm like, for the ignorant people who don't understand that there's a lot of times a more desperate level than you will ever understand, because you've never had to figure out how to wash your clothes or not just go blow your money on instant, snackies or whatever. So I'm so grateful that you are teaching and imparting this, and I'd love to expand what you're doing. And if Susie's startup over here wants to do what you're doing, what advice do you have to her besides not trying to change the whole world day one? I understand that, that's one of the top pitfalls top pitfalls for social entrepreneurs is, as soon as you come up with an idea like this, everybody tries to stack like 900 things. And the best way I've been told is like, think about it as a startup is a canoe, and every initiative that doesn't necessarily make money, but it costs money, but it helps the world, is like putting a giant cinder block in your canoe. You can only carry so many until your boat expands. So viewing it as giving proportionally and taking on one thing at a time is going to be huge to your startup. But I want to hear from you. What advice?
So we did it a bit differently. That's kind of who I am just as a person. We have a nonprofit and a for-profit. And here's why. I never wanted to be donor dependent, meaning I would never wanted to be out begging for money to depend upon these people to bless me, or whatever other word you want to use there, for me to be able to make the mission work. So we have a nonprofit because here's the deal. If you give me $30,000, fantastic. I have some really good ideas and some really great things that we can put that towards. However, starting a for-profit company, which means that you have two bottom lines. And I think that's the piece that social entrepreneurs miss. You cannot have a missional bottom line if you do not have a monetary bottom line, right? And here's how that works. So let's say that you're projected to do $1 million in sales. Boom. Here's your bottom line. Here's how much this is going to cost, and this is going to cost, this is going to cost, and this is how much money you have, right? Boom. This little thing right over here. Then you make your missional bottom line match your financial bottom line. So I have this much money, which means that I can employ this many women, I can educate this many people, and I can empower this many people. So you have two bottom lines, neither one of them give. Meaning that you do not give on your missional bottom line to meet your financial bottom line. And you do not give on your financial bottom line to meet your missional bottom line. You make them equal so that they can work together. Otherwise, you're bankrupt, you're still not helping your mission, and you're stressed to the point that you're throwing up blood. So Once you figure that out, you're much better. And so are the people around you.
I've done that. I love that. So give me an example.
I feel like if you've not been stressed out to the point that you're throwing up blood, are you really an entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, you're so... Guys, we have not talked before. We do not share this information. This is real life entrepreneur stuff. So we're not telling you not to do it. We're just telling you be ready for the bloody throw up. I was told in the very beginning of my career, they said, until you are curled up in a ball, shaking and throwing up on yourself in the corner of a room because you feel like the pressure of the entire world is crushing every molecule of your being, you're not a real entrepreneur. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, they must just have problems.
They haven't raised capital like I can raise capital. Boom, boom, boom.
They're older. They didn't use technology or whatever.
There you are doing a Zoom meeting from the bathroom floor, curled up in a fetal position. Surprise!
But that's why your why has to be so big. And that's what's so shocking to me is how do people go about being an entrepreneur without having this mission and purpose? Like you get to see your purpose every day.
Yeah. It's the most beautiful thing ever.
I do too. And I have no idea what motivates other people.
I think that this is where it lands for me. And it's a quote that I've said a million times, and I'll say it over and over and over again because it is so true. And it's that I believe that if we can teach little girls to dream, that they'll be the force that changes this world. But I believe more than that if we can teach broken women to dream like little girls again, it'll be a force that this world is yet to see.
Wow.
And so when I say that, people always think that I mean the women in our program. And I certainly do. But I mean you, and I mean me, and I mean all women are listening, that if we could stop and dream like a 7-year-old again. You remember what that felt like? We were 7, we were playing tetherball, and we had not a care in this world. And we dreamed that we could be absolutely anything. Nothing stopped us from dreaming so hugely. But then you're 35, staring down the barrel of 36. Life has smacked you and beat you around, and you just don't dream like that anymore.
Yeah, because we're responsible.
Certainly. And I get that. And listen, I feel the weight of that every single day. There are lots of lives that depend on every decision that I make, which I do not take lightly, right? But I think that if we can stop and dream like little girls again, little boys again, it'll be a force that this world is yet to see, because we don't teach people to dream anymore. We teach them to do, to show up, to work, to do this, to do that, do this, do that. We never say like dream. Like, Britnie, dream. What's your dream? What's that dream that's just bubbling up inside of you, right? And I think that that's where we'll change the world for sure. Starting to teach our kids to dream to begin with, but then finding broken people, I say women because that's who we primarily work with, and teaching them to dream again. The world's never seen it.
I love that. I weirdly just wrote the first page of my book last week. And it's so funny you say that, because I've never really talked about it like that, but that's literally the opening, is like, just dare to even imagine a life that you want, like being intentional with it. Like, what do you want the ripple effect of your actions, your consumerism, your precious moments, your relationships, your health, your everything. Like, don't just look at the second that's right in front of you, what everybody you should be doing. You're shoulding.
Girl, if I could cut one word out of the out of the English language, it'd be should. No, you shouldn't. You could.
You should. And it's like, what do I actually want to do? And looking back on my one chance on earth, what did I do? And for me, God gave me this vision early in my career, and it's like the point of life. I've never really shared this out loud. And I'll share the story. So I was on a survival team called Special Forces back when I was 17 years old. And in order to pass and be on the team, you had to survive this trip and actually make it on the 70-mile hike in less than 60 hours. And so they broke us into 2 teams, and they said, one team will win, one team will lose. The winning team gets to actually be on the special forces team, blah, blah, blah. And I did this so that I could be a hardcore missionary in Africa. And so it's a race and the winning team gets there, da, da, da. But, oh, by the way, we lost your bags. We lost your food. We lost your water. Whatever you have on you, you have on you. So go. And I didn't have a jacket. I didn't have a headlamp, but somebody else did. Some people were wearing flip-flops. Some people were wearing jeans. Like, they dropped us off at midnight. And we didn't know if we were going to be dropped in the ocean, in ice or snow or wherever. We were on the Appalachian Trail. And at the end of that trip, during the trip, I was helping this girl who was really out of shape, just couldn't make it up the hills. And I would go put my arm around her and I would like sing worship songs with her and we'd make it up the hill. And for some reason that helped her get through this hike. And then I looked at her shoes because she did not have the right shoes. I gave her my boots and I would like walk on the back of her heels because her feet were just like bleeding through the back. And so at the end of the trip, we were all interviewed individually and the leader said, "Hey, you really hurt the team by keeping that person around." And I was like, "What do you want me to do? Let her die in the woods?" And they're like, "Yeah, well, you cost the whole team, blah, 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 all these things. And why did you give her your shoes? Don't you know you have to take care of yourself before you take care of somebody else or else you're not equipped, blah, blah, blah," just chewing me out. And I said, at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to leave her to die. I gave her my shoes because I wanted to, blah, blah, blah. And they said, "Well, congratulations, you passed." I was like, okay. He said the trip was not about a race. And it wasn't about who had the best team at the end. The trip was actually just a test of your heart. Based on what you've been given and what needs you've seen, what did you do about it? And I think that, I'm not God. I can't tell you what we're here for, but I can tell you that I think that's one of the reasons we're here is just to actually learn how to love and to express that. And I love that you're living love. There's only so much crap we can buy. There's only so much we can do, but can we orchestrate good? And you're doing it.
You can definitely always buy more candles, but I mean, outside of that, everything else. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, I think that that's so true. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day and she's like, "What are you going to do now?" And I was like, I don't really want to do anything else. Like, I mean, first off, I never thought we'd be do this. So really everything at this point is a cherry on top, right? Every talk, every this, every that. I'm like, I did not think that we'd actually be a company. So everything else is a huge thing. And I was telling her, I'm like, I want my life to have the maximum amount of impact.
Yeah.
That's it. How do I maximize my life's impact? Maybe it's staying at 11th. I don't think I'll always be at 11th. I don't. I mean, here's the deal. I enjoy business, but it's not, whatever. If I found the right person to sell it to, or I'd be fine with it. Maybe I'll go start something else. I'm definitely a starter. Maybe I'll go do this, or but what it comes down to for me is how do I maximize the impact of my life? And I think that people miss that. They want to achieve, which is fun. Listen, I'm the most competitive person on the planet. Like, I would have carried her on my shoulders, like, "Girl, we are not gonna, we are not gonna lose this. Let's go. And so I totally get that part of it. But I think what they kind of said at the end to you is the ideal is how do you maximize the impact of your life? Because I promise you that today you're telling that story, but that girl has told that story 800 times because that forever changed who she is as a person. And because she's told that story, somebody else has told that story. Somebody else has told it. So that one day of giving away your shoes and singing these worship songs over her and doing all of this has actually impacted hundreds, if not thousands of lives. In the same story that you're telling, she's telling a slightly different version because of how it changed and impacted her.
Yeah, I've never even thought about that part at all. I never even considered that. To me, it was, life isn't the game we think it is. It's not. It's not the achievement. So no, I love what you're saying.
But when you think about that impacted your life, you can tell by the way you're telling the story and how it's setting on you. But think about her telling that story. Like if you were to interview her today and have her tell that story, it would absolutely positively blow your mind when she was in another hard situation, about how she thought about that, or how when that specific song came on the radio, she remembered that exact moment that you put her arm around her, and maybe nobody had ever put their arm around her. Right? But yet that story still has changed and motivated you as well. So that's why I think that people missed it. It is literally the small moments in your life that maximize the impact of your life. I could sell another $5 million worth of candles, employ 25 more people, do 70 more TED Talks, be all over the world. But where the most impactful parts of my life are the very small, minute things that nobody writes up about. But that is where you get the maximum amount of impact out of your life.
So what advice do you have for other people that want to get the maximum amount of impact out of their life? How can they do it even better?
So you have to figure out like who you are. So I remember when I started the company, and this is a fatal flaw of mine, right? Not everybody has this ability. I really suck at a whole lot of things, right? Zero doubts about it. Like I really am not that great at a lot of things, for sure. But there are some things I'm killer at, right? And so you have to sit down and be super honest with yourself and say, okay, I'm awful at these things. So for example, accounting, emails, follow up. I mean, I could list a million things that I'm really bad at. But I can tell you like 5 things I'm really good at. I'm really great at motivating people. I'm fantastic at casting a vision. I'm great at grinding things out. Like if we need to make 5,000 candles, literally I'm your girl. I can grind it out like 12, 14, 16, 18 hour days, and literally turning nothing into something. It is like this. My friend was just talking about this today. She's like, I swear to you, everything you touch turns to gold. And I'm like, it is just this weird sort of like thing. I don't even know how I do it. Everybody's like, how do you do that? I'm like, if I knew how to do that, I'd write a book and probably be a millionaire. I don't know how, it just happens, right? Like, and so what I always encourage people is these 5 things that you suck at, keep sucking at them, but find somebody else that knows how to do them and then give that to them, right?
I love it. I love it. You are amazing, amazing. What is the best advice that you can give to our listeners before we hop off here? Best advice for them to be able to take home.
Yeah. See, I'm not one that people would come to. No, I'm just kidding. Best advice, I would say honestly, it's to not take yourself so seriously, right? In that, like, once you become somebody, everybody wants a piece of you, right? And what happens is often you're not actually giving them a piece of you. You're giving them a piece of you that you think that you want them to have of you. And then at the end of the day, you have no idea who you actually are, which is a real humbling experience, because you get smacked in the face with, wait, I don't even know who I am because I've given away so many pieces of me. And so I think that the real true answer is like knowing exactly who you are and operating out of that, right? So I have half sleeve tattoos. I love Jesus. I cuss a little bit. I drink some whiskey. I'm rough around the edges, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's okay. You don't have to, you know what I mean? And so then once you understand like who you are, you can be who you are, which allows you to actually like live out of a space of freedom instead of ownership, because you're trying to be something for somebody else, for something else. Not everybody's going to like you. That's literally okay. Matter of fact, that's how it should be. If everybody likes you, you're probably doing it wrong.
I was so offended when I was first told by one of my mentors, Britnie, you're a really polarizing person. I'm like, what? What? I was so offended. I was like, also, what is polarizing about me? What is so polarizing? I think that you are my long lost best friend. We both will never eat.
For sure, people would. Yeah, for sure. My friend calls me a goddamn cheetah. She's like, you walk into a room and you're just like, whoop, 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 whoop. She's like, and people have no idea what they've been hit by, but they're like mesmerized. And I was like, thanks, I think. I'm not real sure.
Wow.
Thank you. Should I change that? I'm not real sure. But yeah, and that doesn't mean that I've like nailed this by any means. I mean, listen, And the other, my other super solid piece of advice, especially for social entrepreneurs, is to find a really good therapist. And here's why. Here's why. And I mean this with like the depth. You want to cut out what I just said and only add in this part. Being an entrepreneur, period, is ridiculously hard. Being a social entrepreneur is a million times harder. But what happens is when you become successful, or when you become this, or when you become that, then your friends begin to feel feelings, we'll say, right? Like, and there's a variety of feelings that they feel. And your relationships change. They do. They have to. There's no way you can fix it. That is just the gut. And so one thing that you have to have is a person in your life who is non-biased, meaning your actions do not affect their life. And if you're able to have that person that's non-biased in your life telling you and speaking these things and these truth over you, you will be much, much better. Everybody in our company, from CEO to women in our program, has to go to counseling. It is a requirement. And they see it on my calendar, Amber Therapy, 3 p.m. The reason I'm doing that is to normalize that this is what we do.
I love that. I love that. I've always had like a mentor or a coach. And even that is hard because sometimes you just got to say stuff and you're like, I don't want them to stop believing in me. But these problems you face are hard. People will turn on you.
Ugh.
You level up at all. Your friends, like it's
literally. I mean, I don't have, I was talking about this the other day. I don't have any of the same friends that I had when I started my company.
wow.
You don't. And for a couple of different reasons. One, it's super isolating because you're working all the time and people don't understand it. For the first 3 years, you do not get to do anything else besides your business, right? And that's not like a work-life balance. No, you don't. Like, that's just how it works. There's no such thing as work-life balance when you decide to be an entrepreneur.
Love you so
There's
much.
no such thing.
Where have you
Stop
been?
believing that lie.
Gosh,
Like,
I don't even say those. It's like,
oh, it physically hurts my face. Work-life balance. You need to have fun. No, honey, that's not how it works. Dave Ramsey said, live like nobody else so that you can live like nobody else. It's the same thing. You want freedom 5 years from now, you get no freedom for the first 5 years.
Correct.
And by freedom, I don't mean like your freedom, meaning like you freely get to choose your schedule. Now, do I believe in self-care and all these other things? Yes, but self-care is not a bubble bath. Self-care is doing therapy. Self-care is making for sure that your finances are involved. Self-care is making for sure that your head is on the swivel. Self-care is not a bubble bath and a manicure, though. If that's what makes you feel good, go for it, honey. Yeah. But there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's literally not a thing.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful expression of your life. You know, everything 100%. You're going to work. We're made to work. We're made to be doing and moving things forward, progressing humanity and making the world a better place, as well as overcoming obstacles that'll help our family and their family. And the thing is, what will you do to have meaningful work? You know, are you going to trade your hours almost like a slave for money? Are you going to trade your time, your one non-renewable resource, for money? Or are you going to trade your time for purpose and meaning and hopefully money?
See, you nailed it. The only thing that's non-renewable is time. Everything else is renewable. Money's renewable. Your body's renewable. Literally every single thing is renewable. The only thing non-renewable is time. This hour that I just gave you, I'll never get back. I'll never get this hour back. I exchanged that. So I saw value in giving you my hour. So it's value traded.
Value trading. So if you're scared to death to be a social entrepreneur after this call.
Good. I probably just saved you a lot of time, money, and therapy.
But by God, be intentional. Do not sell yourself for money. Make sure that you're at least a piece of the puzzle and that the organization that you're trading your precious asset for, your most precious asset for, is resulting in the world being a better place. We're all pieces of it. We have to deal with accounting and taxes and problems and fires and lawsuits and all the crap at the same time as have vision, try to stabilize this thing that's always up and down, and lead and be inspiring and deal with our own problems. Like it's its own thing to be the entrepreneur. We're not telling you have to be. We are telling you that it is, to me, it has been worth it.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, be intentional enough with your time, your life, your money, and make sure that you are on track to being a part of a larger force for good. So we are just so grateful to have you on here, Amber. Thank you for your rawness.
Absolutely.
You really are you are my long lost best friend. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the G-Force podcast. We pray that you are an even more powerful force for good from hearing Amber's rawness, her advice, her wisdom. Amber, you're amazing. We have links below with the discount code to buy 11th Candle and continue to support her great work with your consumerism and your $1,200. We'll see you next time.
You got it. Hey, good to talk with you.